Welcome to the 24th session, where we are using ancient wisdom of 5,000-year-old texts of Indian knowledge system to create a global well-being curriculum. In this session, we will study the Indian knowledge system's approach to science and how this approach to science will prevent social pain and meet the new global goal of education. With what vision do we search for the energy and power hidden in each atom? Is exploding the atom to cause harm an idea that should occur to humans? Has reflection before action that OECD now expects from education, has it been undertaken? What alternate way of exploring energy could exist? Let's take a break of 5 minutes and write a self-analysis of human behavior and whether the current attitude towards science is self-sustaining for the system. What is the Indian knowledge system's approach to science which creates well-being for all? Both current and Indian knowledge system recognize that there is energy hidden in each atom. As all of creation is made of atoms, both recognize that motion and change is the rule of creation. What creates stability of well-being in changing scenarios is the search in Indian knowledge system in science. The learning compass of OECD desires to change attitudes. What is the change in attitude after being exposed to Indian knowledge system and what values emerge naturally? The attitude of current knowledge system on discovering energy inside an atom was to split the atom. Indian knowledge system instead wanted to find the source of the energy which is powering everything in the atom to move and see if that can be harnessed within each individual. How does attitude add or subtract value? We wonder why, despite a focus on ethics in the last 150 years in the current knowledge system, social pain has resulted. We can see it in the answer to the question, now that we have found energy within the atom, what do we do with it? Current knowledge system led to it being harnessed for power, both that generates electricity and for the raw power that is expressed by exploding or threatening to explode a nuclear device. Indian knowledge system education studies the science of its power to change, to seek the ability of well-being. It unfolds the power of human potential within all to create social well-being. What could be the origin of the Indian knowledge system's approach to science? IKS studied nature to discover the uniqueness in everything in creation. Sankhya philosophy studied numbers and Vaisheshika the uniqueness of atoms. One energy made creation interdependent. It found, this is what it found, that there is one energy which is activating and making everything interdependent. Each expression of energy is independent, yet a balance in nature is created by interdependence. So it concluded, one cannot live in the world all by oneself. IKS therefore urged humans to cultivate a sense of community, to live in peace and happiness. IKS Vishisht Advaita begins with the Sehna Vavtu Sehno Bhunaktu Seviram Karvavahi mantra, which says, let's live together, struggle together, grow together in joy and harmony. Indian knowledge system searched how harmony is created in nature. Its concept of science started with understanding nature and human nature together. It investigated using both search and research. Its search was done in the visible world with the eyes open. It also explored within or in the subtle world for Shabda Pramana, even with the eyes closed. It used Anumana and Upamana guided by Shabda Pramana. Using such methods of investigation, it concluded that this harmony in creation is due to the permutations and combinations of mixing of 5 elements and then their merger in 3 qualities. Nature is infinite. It is seen as a chair here. It is shown as a chair here. The source sits on it. Infinite expressions emerge from oneness of a single source. Nature's unique quality is constant change. The source is unmoved, constant. Nature's constant change creates a dynamic balance. And Indian knowledge systems found that creation's continuous change is self-sustaining. Nature's constant change creates this dynamic balance as seen in a spinning top. The fast-moving triangle of creation, sustenance, and creative destruction, when it moves fast, appears to us as cycles in nature. The axis that gives stability to constant change is righteous conduct or dharma. Each element follows righteous conduct of its physical and chemical properties. And when all elements are following their physical and chemical properties dharma, everything is in balance. This is dynamic balance. Hence, Indian knowledge systems sought eternal ideas of righteous conduct to create dynamic balance within the individual and in society. It discovered that nothing in nature is selfish. Hence, selfless love is the Indian knowledge system's source of balance, a dharma of living life. Indian knowledge systems explores nature's balance to find out the twofold way in which humans can live in individual and social balance. Science in Indian knowledge system relates to life. What is the science of living life? That's how IKS starts its search. The body comes to life with the breath. It's therefore IKS studies the source of breath, air, to discover the first way through ether. The study of ether led to the inner science, a guide to the mind to live in the awareness of consciousness. The second way was exploring with the eyes open. The body of nature was studied with the eyes open and their cycles were also studied. This led to finding that nature follows a study of limits. Indian knowledge system science guides humans to use the body with righteous conduct to discover balance through the study of limits. Thus, IKS scientific approach is opposite to the current knowledge system. The current knowledge system studies multiplicity in nature. This makes its study complex and nature is not used as a guide to living life. Indian knowledge systems finds out the uniqueness of everything in creation but looks at the underlying unity. Let's take an example of a tree. The current knowledge system explores each leaf, flower, branch separately. This helps use them for comforts. Indian knowledge system too studies them, but it studies the seed first as an observer. It does not seek to split either the seed or the atom. The power of taking the observer position helps it unravel secrets of nature to shape inner human nature through education. It practices the discipline needed to become the observer. In the Bohr-Einstein debate, Einstein said that God does not play dice. Why couldn't Einstein take out or find God in creation? The source of creation is a fullness of bliss. Creation emerges from its fullness. If creation is taken as a blissful experience, we may compare it to sweet syrup. Its sweetness is because of the source, sugar. The sugar is dissolved in tasteless water of the 5 elements merging into 3 qualities. The eye of sense perception cannot see the sugar, but beyond sense perception, its sweetness exists. Consciousness is similarly dissolved fully in creation. For example, a seed leads to the tree. But can the first seed be found or taken out? It can't, for it has merged totally in it, creating the possibility of thousands of more seeds. With this background, let's go to the Einstein-Bohr debate and analyze it. Einstein differed with Bohr. He talked of God in a scientific search. Einstein believed God does not play dice with the universe. Stephen Hawking was later quoted as commenting that, and I quote, "Not only does God play dice, but he sometimes throws them where they cannot be seen," unquote. Einstein tried to see natural phenomena as thoughts of God. Was his concept of God wrong? Or is it that God does not exist? Indian knowledge systems uses both paths, that God exists and God doesn't exist, to answer questions of quantum mechanics. Buddhism doesn't believe in God, and Sanatana Dharma uses the idea. Yet both provide the same answer as a guide to living life. This is Indian knowledge systems search in science. The purity of search goes beyond debate. They all have the same conclusion. Well, this session is being undertaken without any claim to knowledge of science or any claim to wisdom. But it does start with a simple observation that a small virus was able to bring the world to a halt. So much time, money, effort goes in scientific research. It can create a virus but cannot stop its spread. The IKS study of science too creates inventions and discoveries, but it is equally concerned with what can prevent a graduating student from pressing a nuclear button. Will such IKS ideas be considered scientific too? If so, we examine how this scientific attitude is created by Indian knowledge systems in this session. Science is pure investigation into truth. Nothing is thus beyond questioning in science. Can this questioning be trained even towards the fact that facts which science considers as sacred? Quantum theory does that in science. It questions the sacred concepts of science. However, despite quantum mechanics path-breaking research, some dumb questions about reality still exist. A BBC story quoted American physicist Richard Feynman about puzzles and paradoxes of quantum mechanics. He says, and I quote, "I cannot define the real problem. Therefore, I suspect there is no real problem. But I am not sure there is no real problem," unquote. This story further says about Feynman's analysis of quantum mechanics, and I quote, "He might as well have been talking about the equally knotty problem of consciousness," unquote. How is IKS, Indian knowledge systems, different? Both quantum mechanics and Indian knowledge systems investigate reality or truth. Indian knowledge systems defines the problem and is sure about the problem. BBC relates quantum mechanics to consciousness. Thus, we will use Indian knowledge systems' surety about consciousness to address the problem of quantum mechanics and all the problems that quantum mechanics faces. The goal is to help all comprehend a way to solve these problems. Indian knowledge systems' study of science helps humans discover truth about reality and use the truth, apply it in daily life. Well, there are three questions that a person who is uneducated in science can ask. The first question is the BBC story leads us to ask, does science know the problem? If Indian knowledge systems knows it and can solve it, why not use it? The second question is, does study of science make self-imposed limits to human behavior a voluntary choice like Indian knowledge system does? And the third question is, do scientists experience well-being within themselves? We want our education to create well-being, but do the scientists experience it within themselves? All benefit from comforts that science enables. All of us are benefiting from the comforts that science is giving us. But can its theory be applied in life to give peace and well-being too? This session attempts to answer these questions. What ideas about these questions does current knowledge system have in quantum mechanics? I give a quotation from H. Stapp. I quote, "In quantum theory, it is the observer who both poses the question and recognizes the answer. Without some way of specifying what the question is, the quantum rules will not work. The quantum process grinds to a halt. Nature does not answer willy-nilly all questions." Unquote. Two questions arise from Stapp's question. Indian knowledge systems answers them. Who is the observer who poses the question and recognizes the answer? Does Indian knowledge system have an answer? Nature does not answer all questions, they conclude. For the quantum rules to work, there has to be some way of specifying the question. What is the IKS way of specifying the question? The Indian knowledge system's answer is, the source of creation is the observer, and the way of specifying the question, who am I, is, I am a part of nature, but can I actualize my potential and become the source? Who is the observer in Indian knowledge systems? The source is the I. It observes everything. The chair is nature. The individual is part of nature but thinks it is different from nature. Professor Fedrizzi writes on importance of the observer. Does the book Autobiography of a Yogi give superposition of states as an experience? And I quote here Professor Fedrizzi. In other words, according to our best theory of the building blocks of nature itself, facts can actually be subjective. Observers are powerful players in the quantum world. According to the theory, particles can be in several places or several states at once. This is called a superposition. But oddly, this is only the case when they aren't observed. The second you observe a quantum system, it picks a specific location or state breaking the superposition. The fact that nature behaves this way has been proven multiple times in the lab. Unquote. Facts in current knowledge system use sense perception. Facts can be subjective. Now current knowledge system is concluded. Indian knowledge system seeks to make us, each of us, the powerful observer. If quantum superposition, that is being in several places at the same time, is misinterpreted as free will, the reality of the physical world, that is nature, doesn't seem to follow this interpretation. Nature works within limits of physical and chemical properties. humans too, must discover their unique property, the ability to discriminate using the brain guided by a pure heart, to live in this physical reality. This is the first part of Indian knowledge system's twofold way. But how to live in the second way, the second part of Indian knowledge system's twofold way, the awareness, the source, the observer? The earlier sessions have revealed it. The moment nature is seen, the superposition of states is broken. The source is beyond the mind. A zero mind contains infinite secrets of nature. The zero mind state is an experience, not a state of mind. A validation that its experience has been achieved is reflected in the behavior of the individual. In the natural superposition of states in nature, a balance exists where the three processes of creation, preservation, and creative destruction are taking place. The dynamic balance in nature, IKS, results from interdependence, and IKS concluded that an attitude of help ever, hurt never creates dynamic balance, because everything is helping each other maintain that balance. So what attitude can guide absolute balance? So we figured out how the chair is in balance through the help ever, hurt never principle. But what is absolute balance of the source? Everything in creation is part of the source. So hence IKS says the source loves all and serves all from a state of absolute balance. Therefore, these two sayings of Indian knowledge system sum up the way of living life. Selfless love or zero mind of creation expresses equal love for all. But the mind can never be zero till pran or breath exists. In Indian knowledge system, the mind symbol is the moon. The state of mind that doesn't disturb the natural superposition of states is a waning mind, as shown in the last day of the waning moon cycle. Here, the mind is an observer of itself. It is not seeing creation. Practicing this state is initiated at the end of each session in this course. Similarly, an Indian knowledge system symbol simply reminds us of the way of creation, and that creation is in the left hand of the source. The right hand is free to help pull up all those whose mind is like the crescent moon. Creation is a mixture of 5 elements fused in 3 qualities, as is shown here. Will exploring what was thought to be weird about Indian knowledge system symbols be considered useful now? Can Indian knowledge system's quantum mechanics positively impact the way we live life? Indian knowledge systems believes that education starts with the search of truth. This search is in 3 ways. 1, the truth about the world or the universe as we see it. The second is the truth about oneself. The third is the truth about consciousness that gives life to nature. This is the final goal. Science seeks truth about the world, ignoring the truth about consciousness. Current knowledge system science ignores the truth about consciousness. Indian knowledge system believes that comprehending the reality of oneself is a credible beginning to comprehending the reality of all creation. The mind is the camera to capture the truth of reality. If the zero error in the camera recording the truth is not set, can the image captured be trusted as a true picture of reality? Therefore, while the current knowledge system looks at electron spin, wondering if it rotates clockwise or anti-clockwise and seeks location of its axis, Indian knowledge system investigates the axis itself as an observer. The mind observes. The intellect should fill the mind with awareness of truth. This is what IKS concludes. When the mind seeks the truth of oneself, it is like the crescent moon, just observing itself. It does not get lost in the multiplicity of nature. It seeks a oneness of atoms in creation. Current knowledge system explores the outside world. Indian knowledge system adds a variable to it, the inward-looking mind and its guide, the intellect, which makes a mind like the last day of the waning moon in its cycle. IKS seeks within the source of excellence and goodness, making the mind fit to be an observer. The IKS study of science reveals the use of the body to experience well-being. It finds that practice of discipline helps it. The role of zero in realizing infinite potential is achieved by the experience of oneness with all. Is the current knowledge system proceeding towards Indian knowledge system? H. Stapp argues for the relevance of quantum mechanics to consciousness and free will. Consciousness is a fundamental to the universe, he says. His work has been supported in part by the Office of Science, US Department of Energy. His philosophy has been described as being influenced by both Heisenberg's physical realism and Gohar's. Henry H. Stapp's views of development of science are, and I quote, "This shift converted the role of our conscious thoughts from that of passive observers of a causally closed, physically described universe to that of active participants in an essential psychophysical understanding of nature." Unquote. The value-neutral and mind-neutral basis of current knowledge system approach to science was laid by scientific materialism in the 19th century. Scientists at that time did not give any importance to the human mind. They had concluded that the brain secretes thoughts just as the liver secretes bile. Even in 2006, the failure of the Great Prayer experiment to cure surgery patients was taken as proof that no God exists. Indian knowledge system views God as the observer, not a participant in nature's processes. Hence, it seeks the crescent moon mind to get the observer viewpoint as a guide to living life. The current knowledge systems theory has an underlying belief that physical reality as seen is all that truly exists. Quantum mechanics discovers otherwise. This has led many scientists to challenge this view and propagate a post-materialist science. Many scientists in the current knowledge system created an agenda for post-materialist science. The role of Indian knowledge system, centrality of the human mind as a basis of study of science to discover the art of living life is now recognized by them collectively. Their agenda states, and I quote, "Faith in this ideology, scientific materialism, as an exclusive explanatory framework for reality has compelled scientists to neglect the subjective dimension of human experience. This has led to a severely distorted and impoverished understanding of ourselves and our place in nature." Unquote. Current knowledge system currently mixes up matter and energy. IKS studies matter as an expression of changing nature of expressions of energy. The agenda of post-materialist science says, and I quote, "According to one interpretation of quantum mechanics, this phenomena implies that the consciousness of the observer is vital to the existence of the physical events being observed, and that mental events can affect the physical world. The results of recent experiments supports this interpretation." Unquote. Thus, the IKS view that the nature of the mind influences a perception of reality is very useful. If OECD wishes to transform attitudes through education, the need to transform the way of looking at creation has to change. Environmental problems will continue to persist if a oneness of human survival with nature's processes is not clarified in education. Similarly, If the oneness of the human race is not a firm belief in the mind, the problem of social pain will continue and well-being will remain a dream. Indian knowledge systems brings quantum mechanics alive. Is superposition of states an experience? We all can see that a dynamic balance sustains nature. Can it sustain society and the individual too? Indian knowledge systems explore science in this way. Current knowledge system gets tied down to the box of numbers, of sizes, shapes in the multiplicity of matter. Indian knowledge systems makes the zero mind of the crescent moon the only view that only views itself. That with that mind it is able to jump over the box of numbers of matter. This view of oneness of the underlying energy principle unravels the infinite human potential. By merging oneself with the cause of infinity creates dynamic balance that is outside in creation. It brings that dynamic balance within the individual and in society. The experience of dynamic balance is bliss. Indian knowledge system seeks it as a human experience that is constant, just like the source is constant. Indian knowledge systems education makes the process of doing it very easy, in 3 simple steps. IKS first creates the feeling or emotion or power of oneness with all in the human heart. A self-centered view is transformed by group activities to expand the heart, to identify the idea of self-interest with expanding groups of family, society, nation, world, nature, etc. This is the first step. The second step is it works on bringing these 6 inner enemies to near zero by inculcating humility. A planetarium helps visualize the comparison of the human size to that of the cosmos to aid humility. Now armed with zero selfishness, a transformed heart and an expanded mind, the human being can overreach the box of numbers of matter, identify itself with energy and achieve bliss with practice. This course lays a deep emphasis on practice. Every attempt is made to make all the lectures very short. A 5-minute slot at the end of this lecture is being given for silent sitting. This is to enable the participant to mull over what is said. Whatever has been heard should be repeated in the mind so that it gets absorbed. Just as sugar is stirred in a cup of tea or coffee with a spoon, use the spoon of silence to stir the sugar of Indian knowledge systems in your mind. It takes some time for the tea or coffee to become sweet. Patience is very important. The perspectives shared in the course will seem meaningful only if such silent sitting is done to mull over what has been said. Else, the half an hour spent in delivering the lectures will be a waste of time. We welcome you to undertake an inner journey during these 5 minutes. Only then will knowledge that is outside you will become wisdom inside you. The time allocated for this is actually 20 minutes, not 5 minutes. The time should be increased gradually. This is also a time for the mind to take rest. In case it cannot do that, mull over whether the voice of the conscience has guided you at any time in life till now. We accept challenges for the physical body in games. In a gym, we can have a 20 minutes plank challenge. We may exchange challenges on the quantity of food we can eat. Can we go beyond such challenges to the second step of the Indian knowledge systems? Can we see if the mind itself can take rest and maybe stop working? Can we explore what will happen if it becomes zero? Remember, it is not good to challenge the mind. It rebels and makes you do the opposite of what you want it to do. It is far simpler to observe the mind. For doing this, first the physical body should move as little as possible. Observe the mind as it tells the body to move. You are not telling the body to move, the mind is telling the body to move. Observe the mind. Move away from the mind and see what it is forcing the body to do. Watch the mind as if you are sitting on a fan at a distance. When you are at home, Shavasana in yoga is a good posture for this practice. Try to first silence the body, then the mind. For those who have mastered this, they can try the next method. When you think of nothing, can you experience love without giving it a shape of a thing like your favorite food, or a thing that you want to own, or the physical form of a person? Can it just be love without an emotion to a person or a thing? Can it be love for the sake of love? How do you experience loving yourself? The purpose of this course is to help you discover yourself, that loving being beyond the body and the mind.